Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to With Jewish Youth. And I'm sure you all had a great time last night listening to the Lubavitcher Rabbi and to his Farbrengen, and I'm happy that I was able to be with you then, although it was for many hours, but pleasurable ones, and ones which opened many of our eyes to the problems and the situations of the day in which we are living today. Tonight I have a most outstanding guest, a very distinguished gentleman from afar, and I'm going to introduce him to you, and I'm sure that many of you know him. He is none other than the well-known Professor Yirmiyahu, was otherwise known as Herman Branover. He is a physicist, and he is a professor at the Ben-Gurion University in Beersheba in the Negev. He's also a member of the faculty of the Tel Aviv University. He is the president of the Agudat Akademaim Shamia, which is an association of Jewish scientists that have come from Russia and which is actively engaged in the re-education of the Soviet Jewish scientists who come to the Holy Land. He's also doing research work in America. And at this point, I think we ought to mention the fact that through the intervention of Ezra Sachim, which is a very important organization working for Russian Jewry, and at its head we have Rabbi Yisrael Duchman, one of the very active workers in the Lubavitcher movement. The fee of, or the sum of $40,000 ransom money was paid for the head of Professor Branover. And I want to tell you that they're very proud of the fact because they made a very good investment. Professor Branover has been a great asset to Jews and Jewry, and there are many, many wonderful accomplishments already to his record. Professor Branover, how long are you going to be spending in the States?
I came now for a short visit. It will be altogether about 2.5 weeks.
Is this in connection with the work that you are doing in the research department of your program?
Right. I succeeded to establish a new laboratory of magnetohydrodynamics in the Ben-Gurion University, and I have already some results that I'm going to report about them here in different scientific institutions in the United States. I'm also working under several contracts from American scientific institutions. And of course, I shall make use of the time for another purpose, for meeting with Jews in the United States, for explaining the present situation in Israel, and especially, particularly, what regards the emigration from Russia to Israel, the problems of re-education of Soviet Jews that recently came to Israel, the necessity to bring them not only physically back to their people, but also to bring them closer to the Jewish heritage, to make them Jews in the perfect meaning of the word, after they were so long separated from their Jewish heritage, from any kind of Jewish education in Soviet Russia.
Before we get into that, I think our people would like to know, why is it that you had to pay $40,000 to get out of Russia? Was it that they wanted you so much there, or that they didn't want you here? Which was it?
It's difficult to say. Maybe both of the reasons are correct, but simply, unfortunately, I finally got my exit visa in the time when the big educational ransom were asked from Soviet Jews, and so since I had several scientific degrees, I had to pay for every of my diplomas, and it made the big sum that you mentioned.
All right. Now, you live today in Israel, as we well understand. What is actually your work that you are doing besides lecturing in the universities? And we already heard that you opened a new laboratory and so on. But you also have made mention of the fact that you are very much concerned about the re-education. I like the term. The re-education of the scientists who have come into the Holy Land by virtue of the fact I see you did organize already an organization. And this is the organization which you call Shamia. I don't know what that stands for. Maybe you'll tell it to our audience. And maybe you can give us a little bit of a broader outlook as to exactly what is this organization doing, what is the role that it's playing, and how successful have you been? It's a very big series of questions. Maybe we'll take one at a time.
Well, maybe I shall start with the necessity to re-educate Soviet Jews coming to Israel. You know very well that up to now about 100,000 Soviet Jews arrived to Israel during last 4 or 5 years. This creates a lot of problems. There are problems of material absorption. Especially hard are the problems of professional absorption, because such a small country as Israel can hardly absorb a very high number of professional scientists, people holding different academic degrees. But above of all of the mentioned questions, even much more hard is the spiritual absorption. You have to take in account that those Jews that are arriving now to Israel had no idea what a simple Jewish Hebrew letter means during 3 to 4 generations. From that time, when in the early 20s, the so-called Hecht, the Jewish section of the Communist Party, destroyed all the synagogues, all the Jewish yeshivas, chadorim, and so on. Since that time, no Jewish education existed officially in Russia. But we know that silently, undergroundly, many Jews continued to give Jewish education to their children, and so Judaism succeeded to survive in Russia during all the years. But most of those that are coming now are completely ignorant about Jewish subjects, and when they came to Israel, they still felt themselves strangers in the Holy Land. They had the Jewish spark, the small Jewish spark, pushing them and making them to struggle for the right to emigrate to Israel. But when they finally came, they didn't knew what to do with their freedom and how to use their presence in the Holy Land. So it was and it is still very necessary, very urgently, to come to them, to contact them, to speak on the personal basis, and to make lecture classes for different Jewish studies, for explaining what it means to be a Jew in general, and especially a Jew in the Holy Land. And this was the purpose of the organization Agudat Akademaim Shamir, that was actually established about 2.5 years ago by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, because he was the man that first mentioned the necessity, the importance of bringing the new immigrants back to the Jewish heritage. Otherwise, other people believe that it's completely enough to bring them physically in Israel, in the Holy Land, and it will be all right with them. But we see now more and more how necessary it was, and we are trying now. We have now a much bigger organization than it was 2.5 years ago. We have altogether about 500 members all over Israel, giving up all their free time and all their energy for re-educating the new immigrants. I can say that in many instances we are successful, but of course all that we are doing is not enough. We have to do much more. We have to publish literature in Russian about Jewish subjects. We have to contact every Jew arriving in Israel, and even more, we have to now, especially the last time, we have to contact Jews when they arrive to Vienna. Because it's well known from newspapers that we are facing now a new problem. Many of those new immigrants arriving in Vienna are not prepared to continue their way to Israel. They are not identifying themselves with Israel, with the Jewish people, and sometimes they are going in very curious directions, like, for instance, West Germany, where is certainly not appropriate place for a Jew after the Holocaust. So, and at the same time, it's also very well known that the number of applications in Russia, the number of Jews that wants to leave Russia, unfortunately, is sharply decreasing during the last time. And it is because of the bad letters that sometimes new immigrants from Russia are writing back from Israel back to their friends still in Russia. Those bad letters are influencing many others that were hesitating, that didn't know exactly whether they want to go or not. And we hope that thanks to our educational program in Israel, we shall be able to make the people more happy in Israel, and so they will write better letters, and it will encourage many others to leave Russia, to come and to start their way back to Judaism and Jewishness.
I would like to ask you, Professor Branover, have you always been in the image that you are now as sort of the forefront of Judaism in Russia too? Were you able to maintain your Judaism in Russia, or was this something that you also started anew when you came to the Holy Land?
Well, what regards myself personally, I grew up in Russia in a secular family. I was my world outlook was materialistic till the age of 18, and only later I became interested in Jewish subjects. With very hard difficulties, I got some Jewish books translated into Russian, and that gave me the first push for further thinking. It took many years till I was able to read and to study. Finally, I met several Lubavitcher Hasidim in Russia, and they did a lot to help me to complete my Jewish education when still in Russia. Of course, with this luggage I came to Israel, and I simply was unable not to continue in the same line. And now I see my main purpose, besides my scientific and university work, to help new immigrants that are arriving, and to help even to those Jews that are still in Russia.
All right. First, tell me, how are you getting along in Israel? How is the respect for what you're doing progressing? In other words, do these Russian immigrants who come to the Holy Land and find a group of people like yourself, who are, of course, of a higher caliber, we speak now culturally, and who are dedicated to Judaism, does this have an influence on them? Do you break through to these people? What would you say is the biggest problem that you find with the Jewish immigrant when you approach him to come closer to Judaism?
It's a lot of problems, and of course the task is very, very hard. First of all, we have to deal with people that received their education in Soviet Russia from the Soviet universities, and they are still, even when they broke completely up with the Soviets politically, they are still very adhered to the Russian cultures, to the non-Jewish culture, and also to the materialistic world outlook. So we have to start with explaining that even in the modern time, Torah is still the only possible world outlook for Jews. And we have to do it on a very detailed and a very scientific basis. We have to explain in details why and how Torah cannot be, it's better to say that the modern science cannot in any way influence the eternal truths that Torah is speaking to us about. And we have different books. We already published 3 numbers of our philosophical scientific magazine, Hatchia, in Russian, with some articles translated also into easy Hebrew. We published several books explaining the fact that the Jews have to revise all their world outlook only on the basis of this progress in coming closer to Jewish world outlook, they can understand the joy of being the members of Jewish people. Because, otherwise they were used to see their Jewishness as a curse. And now they are making the most essential transition from the feeling of being members of a people that are living under a permanent curse towards the highest, the best joy in the world, to feel the blessing to be a Jew. And we are trying to help them in different ways.
And now, you also made mention of the fact that you are still maintaining your help to Russian Jews. Now, how are you managing to do that? Is there some line of communication open to you, either overground or underground, to Russian Jewry? And in what fashion does this manifest itself? In other words, what is the exact formula, a mode that you are using in order to get the message across to our Jewish brethren in Russia?
There are several possibilities, and one of the very important is, as I mentioned before, one of the possibilities to educate Jews in Russia are letters, the stream of letters going from Israel back into Russia. So when we are doing our educational work among the new immigrants, we are at the same time influencing many of their friends and relatives that are still in Russia. Now, of course, as it was in all the times, it is very necessary, very important to help to those that are behind, that are still in Russia, to help them materially. And this is, you mentioned in earlier the organization Lishkas Ezras Achim. Of course, they are doing very necessary and excellent works helping Jews in Russia materially, sending them parcels and giving to every family that is thinking about immigration the material possibility to apply for an exit visa, to be sure that they will survive during those months that they will probably be jobless, to be able to pay for the passport, and also sometimes to maintain the Jewish education when still in Russia, because it's sometimes also connected with expenses.
All right. In other words, this is being used as the lead-on. Once they develop this relationship with the people of Ezras Achim, who sort of give them the means to get out, then automatically, I suppose, they could direct them where to go, which is not a bad idea. And I suppose, are you having much success with it?
Well, I think that our limitations are the lack of people and money. Otherwise, the methods that we are applying, I believe that they are correct, and it's only very urgently necessary to make all our activities much broader than they are at the present time, since we are now passing through a very, very hard crisis in the Jewish emigration from Israel, from Russia to Israel. We are observing the decrease of people coming monthly to Israel. There are also sometimes very unpleasant facts of re-emigration from Israel to other countries, not exactly back to Russia, but to other countries. And it means that people didn't find their place among the Jewish people. We're also trying now, in the last time, to start educational and explanational work among the Israelis, among the Israeli community, entire Israeli community, because we cannot speak about Jewish education of Russian emigrants on an isolated basis. They are living in the community, and if we want to see real change in their world outlook, we have to influence also the entire community. And we, as people that came out of Russia, that passed through all the errors of the materialism, of the atheistic propaganda that we were facing in Russia, and finally we came back to the truth, we came back to our Jewish heritage, to the Torah, we believe that we can sometimes be successful, and we not only believe, but we see that we are successful when we are speaking to Israelis, when we are explaining them how and why a Jew can be successful regardless in his own country or elsewhere only when he is making up his lifestyle according to our commandments, to our eternal Torah.
Professor Branover, just to get away for a moment, where did you learn to speak English so well?
Well, I'm certainly not deserving this compliment because even during our short talk, I felt many times very ashamed about my English. I am very limited in expressing what I would like to express, and I'm really afraid that maybe sometimes people cannot understand what I really want to say.
Professor, have no fears. You're coming across beautifully and very, very clearly, and I'm getting the message. And if I'm getting it, and I'm not the smartest fellow around on my radio audience, so everybody else is in the audience is surely getting the message. I would like to ask you, Professor, you are very much concerned about our people going to Israel. Why are you against them not going to a place like America, let's say? After all, there are going to hurt a lot of Jews in America too. And while I could very well understand why you would like to get them on Israeli soil, but at the same time, you must understand Israel is going through very great hardships today, and there's much talk amongst my own colleagues that if they should be flooded today with the 60,000 new immigrants that what the Jackson Amendment may provide, I'm not so sure that's going to work yet, but let's say it does, they can almost put them into bankruptcy financially. Maybe it would be better if they're spread to other parts of the world, or at least to the United States, where we do have a very strong, viable Jewish community. How do you look at this?
Well, you have to understand that I myself, I'm not very happy with the spiritual atmosphere in Israel. Moreover, the situation, the economical, the political situation in Israel is now definitely not good. But in the same time, what regards myself, I have a very strong feeling to the Holy Land. I tried to get out of Russia during 15 years, and I still hardly realize that my dream is now becoming a truth. I'm already about 2 years in Israel, but very often I have to make a special effort to understand that I am really now in the Holy Land. So I think that for many Jews in Russia, it makes a difference to go to Israel, to go to the Holy Land, or to go elsewhere. When it is spoken about Israel, it has a meaning of a national movement back to their to their ancient country. When they are spread over all over the world, when they are going simply going out of Russia and going elsewhere, everybody can say that they simply escaped from Russia. But in the same time, yes, and one more thing, I can say that Israel really needs new people and more people in Israel. And of course, it is hard to absorb them. But nevertheless, I believe that if the absorption will be good organized, it is still possible to absorb them. Now, when Jews decide, after all, to go elsewhere, it is not so bad if their intention is to settle up in a Jewish community and to bring up their children as Jews, to give them, nevertheless, a Jewish education. That, by the way, sometimes is not happening in Israel, unfortunately. And it's what we are struggling against. It. Every Jew coming to Israel would give their children, his children, a Jewish education. But it is very bad when Jews coming in other countries, and particularly in the United States, are going to a non-Jewish community, are settling up in a non-Jewish environment, and then they are completely lost because sometimes nobody even knows where they are. It is very good that in America there are some organizations dealing with Soviet Jews, for instance, as Friends of Refugees of Eastern Europe, that their task is to find the new immigrants, to approach them, to explain the necessity to send the their children in Jewish schools. But of course, we are still missing many of them, and this is that makes me to be in trouble, to worry. I think that when Jews are going straight to Israel, we at least know where they are, and we at least know where to find them, and how to speak to them, and when to speak to them.
Professor Branover, I only have about a minute to a minute and a half left. Believe it or not, the time has run out. I would just like to say, in your travels to the United States, and coming now from 3 different parts of the world, Russia to Israel to the United States, and perhaps you've been to other parts of the world which I do not know about, how do you size up this entire picture, not only the emigration of the Russian Jews to the other parts of the world, but in general, what have you been finding in your travels generally? You'll have to do it very fast, but I've only got about a minute and a half left for you.
Well, I am always concerned, first of all, with the Jewish problems. And what I would like to say regarding the American Jews, that as I learned, they are facing sometimes the same problems that we faced in Russia and that we are facing now in Israel. The problem of very fast assimilation. And the best advice that I can give, if I have the right to give an advice to American Jews, don't forget that you are sometimes in a non-less danger as the Soviet Jews. And if you want to help Soviet Jews, first of all, try to help your own children, and to help by bringing them back to Torah. In our time, in the modern times, the time of science, it is still the most urgent necessity for you.
Professor Branover, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had as our guest tonight Professor Herman Branover, a physicist who is now professor of Beersheva in the Ben-Gurion University, also in the Tel Aviv University, president of Agudas Akademiyim Shamir for the re-education of Soviet Jewish scientists. We want to thank Rabbi Yisrael Duchman of Ezra Sachim. And by the way, the address of Ezra Sachim, if any of you would like to contribute to that wonderful cause, is 688 Lefferts Avenue in Brooklyn, New York, 688 Lefferts Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. But we thank Rabbi Duchman for making it possible for Professor Branover to be with us tonight, and I certainly hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you have any questions or if you would like to write to the professor, you may address it to Professor Branover, care of With Jewish Youth, 1700 Broadway, which is WEVD, New York City, or to my office, With Jewish Youth, 824 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York. And if you want to call in the morning, it's 778-4600. Until tomorrow night at the same time, may God bless you all.